pleasure to be here with you and an honor to be on this DLD stage. I'm very excited to be talking about circular mindset. It's an exciting time for us, I think, in the world. There's a lot of opportunities that is going to come from this big societal rethink that I think we're just on the cusp of, really, in terms of the role of business and the impact that we want it to have. So I think it's very, very exciting times. At IDEO, we're learning through the trials and errors of helping organizations scale up circular innovation. And we do not pretend to have the silver bullet. Every case, every context is different. But in trying to create the frictions that we can learn from by bringing a new model into the existing model, and I think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at this task of how do we sunset, how do we nurse into a graceful end an existing model whilst nurturing and bringing to adulthood a new model. And we've got to do those things together. You know, we're learning a lot about the enabling conditions that we need for that change. And really right at the heart of those enabling conditions is the question of mindset. I think there's a clear case study for, or a clear case, I should say, lots of case studies, a clear case for upstream systems change. There's a lot of talk at the moment about how do we, if we aim beyond net zero, we can hit net zero. And I think the upstream systems change case talks to that. We need to really redesign the system upstream. But we are struggling. We are really struggling with that task. We are really struggling to move the agenda upstream in society and in organizations. We're really struggling to move beyond singular efforts, singular downstream efforts, particularly in organizations, and that's really my experience. And I think if we ask ourselves, why is that? Why is that? I think a lack of an alternative vision for how that business is going to create value at scale. In other words, how does the core strategy move away from creating obsolescence, driving demand, focusing on factory throughput at the lowest possible cost? That's the core business model, the core strategy for a lot of organizations that are deeply trying to pursue circular. And there is clearly a tension there. And I would argue we've got caught in an efficiency trap. That's kind of what's happening to us at the moment. We are so used to spending decades perfecting the engine, making the engine more and more efficient. And we've got very, very good at that. But perfecting the engine, making it more efficient, making it less wasteful, is doing two things that are counterproductive. It's actually creating lock-ins to the existing model. It's making the existing model seem psychologically and economically more attractive because it's less bad. But less bad doesn't serve very well as a vision for us when we are in a situation of escalating connected crisis. We know that a restorative and regenerative circular economy can address many connected problems that the extractive linear economy has created. 45% of GHGs are connected to how we extract, produce, and consume goods. So there is a compelling case for that systems change, but unfortunately at the moment, I would argue not the right mindset for how we change it. We need to move beyond addressing the current machine and seeing it as inefficient and move to a different view of the task and the challenge. Move to a different view, move to a different North Star. And I think that's shifting from machine brain to forest brain. So we need to think about value completely differently. We need to redesign how we create and circulate value. And I'm not just talking about value capture and extraction. In fact, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about circulating value. Forests can be an amazing North Star. In fact, when I'm often asked, what is the ultimate circular economy case study, it's useful to think about the forest because it is the ultimate circulation economy. It's the ultimate abundant system that is regenerative and restorative. And the great thing about thinking about kind of, maybe the forest or the woods that we knew from when we were children is it gives us a very powerful image of that system. So I would encourage you to do that whilst I'm talking. In the forest, many ingenious partnerships circulate value, and there are exchanges of value all the time. We've got these ingenious partnerships that circulate the forest products, the nutrients, which are all built from renewable inputs. They are all highly interoperable elements that can be exchanged between different organisms and entities right across the system. Production is decentralized but highly connected. It makes it very resilient. When one part of the system goes down, the rest of the system stays kind of producing. Forests can warn one part of the system that a fire is coming, and the trees can prepare for that. They've even proven that trees know when they're transporting nutrients to their own offspring. But essentially, the big trees take a lot from the system and give a lot to the system. They are, if you like, custodians of future value. All competition in the forest ecosystem serves system health. And that's very, very important when we think about that different model of circulating value and healthy dynamics within the system, and not always wanting to extract value to the fullest extent and capture and take away value. One example of this is we were working with a company recently, a household goods manufacturer, who was trying to figure out how do they balance this kind of cost of the circularity as a sort of cost, but also wanting to keep their goods as cheap as possible, and price always kind of winning out and circularity taking a backseat. They were looking at a new market. They were looking at India and thinking, how on earth do we scale in that market? And the challenge that they found was that they were almost put off by the fact that there was a huge risk that their goods would actually be making more money on secondary markets in resale economies and in reconditioning markets and systems around the country. In India, there's a huge grassroots circular economy. But what they used from the forest analogy was this idea of ingenious partnerships, of creating systems of abundance, and then looking to monetize that ecosystem and monetize that ecology. So they ended up thinking about these reconditioning networks as actually core partners for them, where that would allow them to create abundant systems for their product. And if they designed their products for those reconditioning systems, supported those systems, supplied them with services, they could create a whole new kind of business model for them in that marketplace. So that's an example of a company taking that idea of forest as analogy, forest as model of what good can look like. So as we think about the different enabling conditions, and there are many that we really need for these kind of thriving future business ecosystems, we need to shift from that idea of tweaking the machine to a different kind of business ecosystem, to a different kind of resilient ecology. We need to shift from business models that are very singular in the way that they look at the world to hybrid business models that are valuable because they don't just utilize resources, they regenerate them. We need to combine business models, think about economies of scope and not just scale. Thinking about our business systems and our business models as value networks that connect widely and offer as many diversified opportunities for revenue at different parts of the ecosystem. But to really obtain those opportunities, we will have to think about a different stance, a different mindset, as I said. We need to shift from this narrative of, it's kill or be killed, this highly individualistic mindset, where we can't often see the opportunities ahead of us because we show up, particularly as Western businesses, with a very dominant stance. We have to be at the center of everything. And these new partnerships, these new ecologies and ecosystems are not ones where we will necessarily want to be at the center. They won't necessarily work as effectively if we are. So we need to rethink the mindset, and we need to think about how we approach even the basics of strategy development, using design-driven approaches that allow us to explore where value lies, that allows us to explore the frictions with the current system, and build more certainty and clarity about where to invest and what to do next, because this stuff is not easy. So I shall leave you with one final thought, which is that let's use design as a disruptive force to create businesses that will have the social licenses of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. This was amazing. I especially liked your idea about the shifting from the from the machine thinking to the forest thinking, from linear to circularity. And now I want to introduce you to Jens Thiemer, our co-host, our DLD co-host, and he is the brand manager, the brand responsibility leader of BMW. Thank you, Jens, for coming to the stage, to this circular stage. Isn't it a wonderful stage? Please give the stage designer a clap. And he will have a conversation with you about his idea of circularity.
Thank you, Chris. Amazing input. I especially also love your analogy of the forest.
Thank you.
I think this is probably the most ideal ecosystem you can imagine. And therefore, I think that's a great benchmark, if you want, so a great role model.
Well, thanks for having this conversation with us, Jens. We'd love to hear a lot more about what BMW are up to, because I know you're doing a lot. You know, it'd be great to understand a little bit more about how is sustainability coming up in your industry? How is circularity popping up in your strategy?
Well, I think the car industry, Chris, is something which is there for, as we all know, for over 100 years. And of course, cars are a great invention, a symbol for freedom, for independence, for self-determination. And I think this is all positive things. But over the last years, we all, of course, experienced that there are also a lot of pain points with the car, not only during the usage, but of course also within production, what happens to the car afterwards. Millions of new cars are produced every year. In the car park globally, there are billions of cars. And I think now it's time really not just to make cars safer, more comfortable, faster. We all experienced that. And we also all experienced kind of sustainability efforts. So sustainability is a hygiene factor in our industry for years. But we at BMW, we really ask ourselves the question, there must be more. And we came really intrinsically, highly motivated and very seriously to the answer that it has to be a clear commitment, not only towards BMW or for BMW or from BMW, but as a role model for the whole automotive industry to think much more and to act in circularity. It's a duty, because otherwise, I'm totally convinced, there will be a time where probably the car will be taken away from society if we are not reacting now. So the clear commitment, the clear duty, the clear strategy, and you can call it a North Star, you can call it a purpose, you can call it a mission, we all heard that. It's something which is big, which is ambitious, but it's very clear, and we are very transparently talking about that and formulating that, is really to make cars 100% recyclable. And to follow holistically a path which you described perfectly as circular economy. I think that's the ambition of the industry.
That's great to hear. And so what are you learning about what kind of customers want? How does the customer picture fit into this? Obviously, you've got the system picture. What's the customer?
Well, first of all, I think this vision I was trying to describe has actually some uniqueness, because first of all, we have to convince also all other industry partners to follow that path. And not just because it's so cool or it's so great to be number one or to have another marketing narrative, not at all. It has to be really embraced by every colleague, by every business partner. It has to be really the strategy of the company and not just another strategy amongst others. You were talking about mindset, and I think, first of all, that's the biggest task. Secondly, I think it's a great task, not only for securing your business model and your product. Of course, we want to keep up to cars, but I think there's also a new definition of status amongst consumers in the world. So if you, like BMW, sell first-class mobility solutions, cars, services, etc., then you have to talk about your perception, your image, and status. I think there's a great sentence which is describing the change of status in the world, and I love that sentence because it's so crystal clear. It's not enough when you talk about leadership to be the best in the world, but additionally you have to be the best for the world. And therefore I think that's the greatest explanation. Also how customers think, what customers think about premium brand, what customers think about luxury brands. BMW is a premium and a luxury brand. There's no premium, there's no luxury without sustainability any longer. People are willing to pay for that. People are willing to see that as an added value. And at one point, I think circularity aspects, they are probably the main selling argument you can have in your hands. And therefore, I think that's not only great for the planet, it's not only great for your economical value, it's also great to be closer to your customers and to really understand yourself as a relationship brand.
Thank you. That's very, very interesting. And I spoke a little bit about this idea of creating frictions and prototyping the future as a way to sort of learn about where to invest and what to focus on. And you very recently launched your iVision Circular concept.
We did.
That would be a fantastic example of that, I think. And perhaps if you could give us a bit more insight into that idea.
So on the occasion we are doing that talk here, probably everybody is knowing that we are having one of the biggest automotive fairs and platforms in the world, the IAA, here in Munich for the first time. And the day before yesterday, we showed for the very first time a car which makes that vision I was just describing as tangible as possible. Of course, we are already having cars in the market, and we are having cars in series production where you have already a high percentage of recyclability. That's clear, and we will continue that path. But with that car you were just mentioning, it's called the BMW iVision Circular. We take that idea and show how in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and it will take that time. So it's not a short-term vision. Yeah? It will take that time, we know that. And you have to really stick with that, you have to drive that. We show what is possible, because that car is built 100% out of secondary materials already, 100%. So we call it secondary first. It's used steel, it's secondary aluminium, it's already recycled rubber, it's recycled glass, it's everything, and you see what you can do from those things, fantastic new materials. Yeah, so it has a fantastic appeal. Also, it's melting sustainability, circularity with a luxury approach, and that goes so far that we also say there's a battery. It's a fully electric battery vehicle. There's a solid-state battery, and also that solid-state battery in there is 100% recyclable. Of course, that's a vision, but that car is built like that, and it is also assembled like that, because when it comes to recycling, so it's always a question, how are the materials composed? Yeah? Is it mixed materials? You have really difficulties to disassembly. But when you take, for example, see the seat, how it is done, how it is engineered, so it is easy, absolutely easy to disassemble at the end. You can have the raw materials, and to make that picture very clear, you give us, and that's the vision actually, that's the ambition, you give us your your 3 Series BMW, you give it back, hand it back to us, and we make out of your 3 Series your new 3 Series. And that's, I think, the point. We call it reuse, of course, a reduction of materials. You do not need so many materials as we are using for cars today. Then reuse, and at the end recycle. That's the approach.
It's an incredible vision, and I hope that we see that scale up, because
I hope so.
That's what we need.
I hope so, and I can only repeat that. I can only say that again. I think that should be a clear North Star for the industry, because I think cars are doing, of course, for many people, are providing a lot of, as I said, freedom, but also a lot of joy, especially when it's a BMW, I may say so. And we have a clear sentence in the company which makes it so precise as possible. We call it really Freude or joy forever. Yeah? So we were just hearing when the Americans wanted to go to the moon. Yeah? There's the anecdote that the president was going through the platform, was saying, "What are you doing there?" And that the famous sentence, I think a cleaner said that or somebody, Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. So what we want to hear in the company is really, I'm helping to create the most sustainable, the circular car of the world, to remain Freude forever, to remain joy forever. I think that's a great ambition, and therefore I love that. and I think we are seeing the reactions here. That's probably the right way, but it's a hard way. Yeah, so you know that better than anybody else. Yeah, it's not something which is only there for a year and then you change your strategy, but that's the approach for the future.
Thanks very much for this conversation.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.